Now, the fifth rule that all living things must follow is that living things transfer energy among themselves and between themselves and the environment. So let me just go ahead and write transfer energy, beautiful handwriting, and the easiest example of this is, of course, again, the sun and a plant. I know I use this example quite often, but it's a lot more easy to explain rather than people. And let's go ahead and talk about the transfer of energy between themselves and the environment first. Well, we already know that the sun has a ton of energy and that plants use this energy in a process called photosynthesis to create food. So obviously, the plant is transferring the energy, or energy is transferred from the sun, which is right here, to a plant. Now, of course, if this plant was something like, let's say it was corn or wheat, then typically what happens is human beings come in and they would want to get energy from the plant. So that would be another transfer of energy between the environment and the organism. So, of course, energy from the plant is consumed into the human, and the human, since this is food, and we'll talk about what chemical reactions go on, but they actually turn this into an energy that the human can use. So, of course, that's what I'm talking about whenever I mean transfer energy between themselves and the environment. Energy would be converted, in this case, from the sun to the plant to the human. And whenever I say the other part of the rule that living things transfer energy among themselves, I'm talking about the chemical processes that go on inside a human or a plant to turn that energy into food, or whenever humans eat plants, to turn that energy from food into energy that the human can use to rebuild their cells and create new cells and do a bunch of processes that involve life. But we'll talk about more about that later on. Talk about more about that. Talk more about that later on. That's what I'm trying to say. But right now, just remember rule number five, in order for something to be considered a living thing, is that living things transfer energy among themselves and between themselves and the environment. So now let's go ahead and move on to number six. So number six is actually really easy, one of the easiest ones. It's that living things grow and develop. So grow and develop. Now, I separated grow and develop because they're actually two different things. So we already know that human beings, you yourself, believe it or not, were a single cell at one point in your life. At the beginning of your life, you were one cell, and then again, we're going to be talking about, reproduction and how life is formed later on, but you pretty much split in two and then that split in two and you reproduced enough times into this is distracting me because I tried to draw a bunch of cells with DNA and it ended up looking like a thing of grapes. But anyways, you were one cell and you turn into a bunch of different cells. So that's what I mean by growing. You grew, and that's why you are considered an organism. But what do I mean by develop? Well, do I mean growth? Well, the reason that I separated growth and development is because development, think of it like specialization. This part of a cell group may have turned into your eyes, this may have turned into your brain, this may have turned into, I don't know, maybe your skin cells. So basically, as you grew, your cells begin to specialize into different parts of your body necessary to become a human being. And growth, like I said, that's why you were one cell at first, and you become, trust me on this, this is the estimate that they say you are now 100 trillion cells. In development, just think of development as specialization, where different cells become different things necessary for that organism's survival. So, rule number six, all living things grow and develop. So, rule number seven is actually an easy one, and that is just going to reproduce. And basically, what I mean is all living things reproduce or go through reproduction. And come to think of it, I don't think it's a good idea to draw a picture of reproduction on YouTube, especially human beings reproducing. But I'm sure that if you want to, you can go to plenty other websites, not YouTube, but you can see videos of human beings trying to reproduce on other websites. But for now, again, it's pretty self explanatory. What reproduction means is when living organisms try to make, or they make other living organisms. So that's what reproduction means. Self-explanatory. Of course, you guys know. So now that I won't draw any pictures of that, I'll just keep this on the same slide. The last rule for an organism to be considered a living thing is that it needs to evolve, and organisms go through a process of evolution. Now, by evolution, I just mean that some traits or characteristics take time to develop and they aren't just there all at once. So, whenever I talk about evolution, I'm going to go into more detail about this, but for right now, it would be silly to try to cram it into a couple-minute video because there's so much that I have to cover concerning evolution. It's probably going to take several videos. But 7 and 8 are pretty self-explanatory. All living things must reproduce and they go through a process or they have traits that evolve over time. So just to recap one last time about the 8 different characteristics that all organisms or living things share is 1. Living things are made up of cells and the cells contain DNA. Rule number 2. All living things must maintain order inside their cells and bodies. Number 3. Living things regulate their systems. Number 4, living things respond to signals in the environment. Number 5, living things transfer energy among themselves and between themselves and the environment. Number, 6, living things grow and develop. 7, of course, they reproduce. And 8, more about evolution later. But for now, thank you guys for watching this video, and I'll see you guys in the next one.